Hey, it's Lori. Welcome back to You Are Soaring. We're so glad to have you. And I have the privilege of introducing a great interview that I had done with a friend of mine, Carrie. She's a friend and a professional colleague of mine. And I had the opportunity to talk with her about her self-awareness journey and where it's taken her to make some big life decisions and changes. And I thought that some of her learning might be beneficial for our audience and some key tips and things that you could take away from her experiences. So I hope you really enjoy the interview with Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Yay.
Hello.
Well, good to see you today, and I'm so grateful that you're taking time to just share your journey of self-awareness and some changes you've made. And I'm just so grateful that you are spending time with me, and then I can share with others so much that you've learned and how you're making changes and how other people might be able to take some similar steps. Do you just want to share a little bit about you, where you're at, anything you want to share?
Sure. So where I'm at right now is approaching, different milestones. I have two children. My son is 19. My daughter just turned 16. And my husband and I have been together for the past 20-something years. So kind of like approaching that next step in life where the kids are more independent. And like, how does that affect me? And a lot of it, I think a lot of what we'll talk about today is what I have been doing previous to this to make sure that they had everything that I wanted them to have. Most definitely like thinking about everybody else around me except for myself. So I'm approaching time now where I want to start to think about myself. So in the previous time, I guess my background, I've been in IT 18 to 20 years. I started off as a developer. I did that for about 8 years. And then I moved into IT management and had been doing that for the past 10 years. And I would say probably 15 of those years have been 100% virtual. So working from home, at a computer all day, and getting to interact in actual life once or twice a year, just with like on-sites and things like that.
Like, how did you think that impacted you? I'm curious if at all, being virtual.
Yeah.
Did it have any impact?
I think it did. So I didn't realize it because I was so focused on the benefits, because there are a lot of great benefits, especially if you have young children. So I could be here with them, when they got home from school, or if they were sick, it was easy for me to go grab them. I was always available, right? But the downside of it is you're also always available for work. So it never stops. For a long time, like the benefits outweighed, the problems. But as I got older and as the kids needed me less, it became like more and more realizing that like I do miss interacting and just walking around to go to a meeting. People talk about Zoom fatigue, and it is a real thing. So it's exhausting to sit in front of a camera for 8 to 10 hours a day. Think of it this way: if anytime I did have to interact in a social setting for like a long period of time, like let's say a wedding or something like that, or even when we would get together at on-sites, the shock of being around people was pretty overwhelming, and it was like exhausting, frustrating, and really started to make me think like, oh my gosh, I feel like a hermit.
That's like, how do I behave or act?
I didn't realize until now like how isolating it actually has been.
I understand that and totally concur. So you left corporate as of which day?
So 1 month ago, I left.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay. So what would you say were the key things or the key factors that made you learn, I'm not happy here, something needs to change?
So it probably started a long time ago, if I actually think about it. So I did the climb in management, and went from like being a single manager to managing multiple teams to managing other managers, and then all the way up to director. And it was go, get the success, get the money that goes along with it. because that's going to benefit your family. And then once I hit that director point, I realized that I wasn't really having fun anymore. And I did make a decision then to take a couple steps back and go back to managing a single team at a new company. When I did that, I thought that would make me happy. I thought like the director job's the problem, right? But in reality, it became pretty quick, like even after like 3 or 4 months at the new company with managing just a single team. At first I was bored because it wasn't challenging. And then even as I tried to, okay, like let's start to build up again and go, climb that ladder again, it was just exhausting. Like I found myself like saying, I don't want to do that. No passion to like learn new things, no passion to take on new challenges. Even though I was bored, I was still like, yeah, but I don't want to do anything like to fix that here. A year and a half ago is when those feelings started. It took a while for me to get to the point of saying, I'm gonna make the leap, making excuses, right? If you just stay, another year, then financially we'll be in a better place. We can get, our son a car, or we can get our daughter a car when she turns 16, if you stay for 6 more months, So there's always these trade-offs of like, if you only just do a little bit more, then you could do more for your family. So once again, putting myself on the back burner.
So was there like a specific event or like a moment that triggered awareness of I am really unhappy. There's too much stress.
I actually was waiting in the car. I had driven, it was during the day. I think it was like around 2:00 during a weekday. And I took my daughter to a doctor's appointment. I was waiting in the car for her to come out. And I got paged for an incident. So in IT, that's when something goes wrong in production, and it's like a kind of like an emergency scenario. Everybody has to figure out what happened. So I'm trying to handle this like from my phone in my car, and my daughter comes out and she sees like I'm flustered, I'm kind of like spazzing. And it was just like this bubble of frustration that burst. So I ended up like, I wasn't able to do much. So I got off the call and just let them know I'd be back to my office, in a half hour or so. After I got off that call, though, of course, my daughter asks me like, what's going on? And I just burst into tears and was like, I can't, like, I hate my job. I just unloaded on her. And I think like the tipping point was her saying, you need to just quit. You haven't been happy, and I can't remember when. What am I doing? Like, why am I even doing this? If like my family thinks I'm unhappy all the time, and I was, but it was those trade-offs of like, yeah, so what if you're unhappy because, we could go on this vacation, or, we could afford to do this, or we could afford to do that.
Wow. Oh, it's so powerful for your daughter to ask, and then just for you to realize at that point, what am I doing? What was the next step? What was your next thought? Or when you started, what am I doing? What then? Like, what did you do?
That happened, I think it was on a Wednesday. That night I did just like some soul searching. I didn't, bring it up to my husband or anything. So I did that Wednesday night. And then Thursday, I woke up and I decided I'm going to write a resignation letter. Something very out of the ordinary for me. I'm a very big planner. Like I always have a plan A, B, and C. But the whole point was I felt like I need to not do that in this case, and I need to just get out of the situation. So I wrote the resignation letter. I figured out financially, like how much of a padding or cushion we had, so that like when I did talk to my husband, like it wouldn't be like this shock of like, we won't be able to pay the mortgage next month. So that Thursday night, I told my husband, and he was overjoyed. He also agreed that I've been unhappy forever. So he was really supportive, and I turned in the resignation the next day.
I have so many questions I want to ask you just about so what would you say for anybody listening are resources you used? And what I heard you say was, I needed to process myself. And so it seems like you're really self-aware, Carrie, and not a lot of people are, but what were the cues or stressors or other things? So your outside influence was your daughter.
Yes.
What did you know internally about you leading up to that? Like, what were the symptoms, stressors? How did
Yeah.
like what were some habits, or if there's anything that also told you this isn't going right?
So there was plenty. So definitely like bad habits, drinking more than I should, um, smoking more than I should, and not being able to quit smoking, even though you try and fail, which is common. But like if you're in a stressful situation, like you're almost setting yourself up for failure. And then my physical appearance. So physically, I when I was younger, probably even into my 30s, I was very big with working out. Like it just made me feel good. I ran a half marathon before, like very active, right? All of that had gone to the wayside. I'd been the heaviest I'd ever been, even when I was pregnant, heavier than I was when I was pregnant. So feeling bad about that as well, on top of everything else. And then I think like one of the biggest things, especially I'm about to be 49, so especially at my age and having those bad habits, you start to think about your health. I noticed that only when I would work, I would get like almost like mini anxiety attacks to where very much flushed, and then I would get a little bit of a dizzy thing, almost like a vertigo. And it would only happen, even if I wasn't in a stressful situation, it would only happen like when I would go up to my office and start working. On the weekends, wouldn't happen at all. But as soon as I would go back in on Monday and I would get in there, it all would start again. And I'm like, oh, what is going on with me? And like, it's scary, right? I was like, am I going to have a stroke? What is happening?
Yeah.
That probably was happening for about 3 months before I decided to quit. So I was trying to like convince myself that like, you're going to be stressed anywhere. It's the bad habits. You got to stop all that other stuff, and then this will go away. But the reality is, like, if you have that stress, that constant state of stress, I feel like your body is in a constant state of inflammation, regardless of what you're putting into it or doing to it that is, not good. You could be the healthiest person in the world, but if you are in constant stress, like your body is in fight mode. It's trying to protect you. And I think that's what like inflames you and causes you to like give yourself signals like this vertigo stuff that happened. Like, okay, you're not listening to your mind. So my body's like, now I'm going to make you feel it physically because you're not listening. So.
Do you have that anymore? Is that gone? Like, did that end, that vertigo and how you felt and
It did for the most part. Every once in a while, I will get a little bit of the vertigo stuff, and like I'm still in the process of trying to get healthier physically. But it's like light years away from where it was with work. But I think a lot of that too is detoxing, right? I'm figuring out what's happening next for me. So I think part of that process of detoxing, there's going to be like little stressors and little things in the back of your mind of like, did you do the right thing? Should you go back? Wouldn't it be easier if it went back? The devil on your shoulder saying like, just go back. It'll be fine. You can do it.
Yeah, I think I've shared with you, or I've shared with others. I am so used to keeping my hands full, meaning busy, 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 stay busy, stay busy, stay busy. You should be doing things. You should be producing. You should be. And the moment I stopped so busy, which is I'm still working on. So I left corporate 2 months ago, and I just starting to feel like what my normal Lori is now. And so I did go into the pattern of keep my hands full like I always was every day with work, and then you add this, and then you added that, and then the stress of work was enough. It was so much that I'm starting to pick and choose a little more and figure out what's going to serve me right versus I'm just staying busy. And I think I was staying so busy because I don't know if I didn't want to acknowledge how I felt, or that I don't know, like it was a coping mechanism. Like some people, have different habits and vices, but I think mine was if you stay constantly busy, you're good. And so
Right.
it started in bed and I started to slow down. I did pick up the habit of trying to do all these things, and we're like, we're just not doing it. So I was able to say, I don't need to do that. And now I'm sitting with myself a little more. And like sitting with myself, I think I was telling you right before we joined or started the Zoom, was that I'm lonely. Like, so I might need relationships or just
Mhm.
sit alone for a little bit and be comfortable. It's hard when you kept yourself so busy.
It does feel like now that I have more time and I'm not like same filling it with like anything possible just so that I know that I can feel like I'm contributing value somehow, right? Um, when you do take a step back, I'm like, wait a minute, like, do I like who would I hang out with even if I, could? And do I have someone, do I have relationships, or are they all kind of like serving a certain purpose versus like helping me grow?
Yes. And I think for me, I have to slow down and stop to have a good relationship. And I wasn't. You're right. It was like, did it serve a purpose or did it fit in what I had going? Okay, good. Let
Right.
me, yeah. What were your fears and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll admit I don't think I have overcome them yet.
Okay,
um,
sure.
but the biggest fear for me was we are going to lose um, everything that we have, everything that we planned. My husband and I, we had bought a lake house and it's going to be our retirement home. And now, like, because of me leaving IT, we may have to sell it. I think there was fear there, not fear that like that would impact like my husband and I's relationship at all or anything like that. More of like, we worked so hard for that and we love it, and now we're going to have to lose it. And again, going back to bringing, kind of stomping on myself of like, we're going to lose it because of you, which isn't the case, right?
Yes.
We're going to lose it because you couldn't handle it.
Yes.
All those thoughts go into your head, and I'm really, really having to work to stop them and spin it and say, no, that house doesn't, make you have a good marriage, or that house isn't the only thing that is of value.
I had this with Tony too, where he races on the side, and it's a very expensive sport, motorcycles. Like it just, and he said a few times as I was leaving, and well, I'm probably going to stop then because you're not going to make the same amount of money and it's going to look different. And I just took that internally to be like, you won't want me anymore. I'm putting these words around it, but like, you won't want me anymore. I'm not going to be good for you. I'm going to fail you. And I even said, that makes me feel horrible. But to be so self-aware and to redirect your thought to say, I am valuable. These are just, that's not what he meant. He never meant to. He was just
Right.
saying, I don't think this is going to continue. Here's some thoughts I have. And I took it internally to say, oh no, I've got to fix this and solve it. And that's the habit I needed to break. And it seems like you really were able to shift your thoughts. How did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think it's still like a process because I still have those thoughts 100% every day. I more look at how my family is around me now. Right. So there's more laughing, there's more like interactions. It's just different. Like they're seeing a difference in me. And like they're less apprehensive. So like previously, like if I was working or something and my daughter needed something, it was very much like, hey, do you have a minute? Like kind of like walking on eggshells, or if my husband was like asked me to do something, he's like, I don't know if you're going to have time, but could you maybe, do this? And like now it's different, right? Like there isn't this, like, they don't have like this kind of fear of putting more on me because she's already at the breaking point. So we can't, kind of like being not around eggshells around me, and that's gone.
So you're checking in, it sounds like I'm restating a little bit, but it seems like you're checking in truly daily and saying, these are good things. I see changes intentionally. I feel better. My family means so much to me. These are my values, and this is what's important to me. So what I talk about is values a lot, and I think they're not sexy or cool, so people don't think about them. But when you're out of alignment of your values, you feel it, and there's more friction, and you're not as happy. And I think you have to shift some things, and whatever those are.
Like it's prioritizing like around your values versus around, other things. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, I think people are go, go, go. this is what it is, like, this is the habit, or this is what's expected. So they don't take a minute to say, one, what are my values? Like, what is important to me?
Oh.
And two, and not the material things, right? That when I talk about values, or when I think about values, I don't think about, what's important to me is that I have, a big house and a boat and a this and a that, like material things. People maybe like might struggle with that, of like understanding what is actually important that's not material.
I think about my values and why I left corporate. It didn't go along with my values anymore about how I felt people should be treated. I had to believe in my values and say, I really believe we should be treating people differently at work and thinking of our resources differently. And I knew so much so that there was such friction against what I believed and how we were operating that it made that leaving a little easier. It was still very, very hard to walk away. That's awesome. I can't wait to see what you do. If you ask people sometimes, like I have a really good friend who's a VP at a company, and she's talked about working in a flower shop. She's such a beautiful designer, landscape designer in her home, and she's like, I would love it. It's like everybody has maybe a secret thing that they would just love, or something that they put to the side, but it might really be a great passion that you could earn money at, Having
like the time and the headspace to go volunteer at like a pet shelter would be great.
Okay, so looking back, is there anything you would have done differently in transitioning?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that I wish I would have done was just realize like how far I let it go. Like in reality, like for health-wise, I probably should have made this change 2 years ago. It's hard when you're in it because you don't realize you're doing it, but like talking yourself out of doing the right thing. Because you're scared, or because you think you have to, or, whatever, that thing is that's making you say like, yeah, don't do that yet because all this might happen. Don't do that yet because you don't know this or you don't know that. And, I guess like, I wish I wouldn't have listened to my fears, and I would have just moved forward with, you need to get healthy. You want to do this, do it. And then let's see what the repercussions are. But again, I could have done it 2 years ago. So like, I look back on that and I'm like, wow, okay, so you spent 2 years completely miserable for no reason.
Learning more about my personality, and that's what we teach, is really learning about yourself. That's so important for our coaching business, is take time to learn what your fears are. They're real, and they're driving your behaviors and your motivations. What you are doing is not easy at all. So I'm so grateful for sharing all of this. So what would you say to somebody who's struggling, feels stressed, similar to your symptoms of where you were, stressed in their job? Doesn't have to be corporate, it can be any job. And they're feeling it like you felt. What would you say?
If they have the means, I would say you need to take a mental break of like a week. And it needs to be a mental break from everything that's going on in your house, whether it be the pets or the kids or the husband. Like almost, it sounds kind of weird, but like almost like isolate yourself in a cabin in the woods somewhere and just actually be with yourself. And there's no other distractions, because then all those things that like we're blocking out, I think are right in your face and you can't deny them. They're right there and there's nothing else to distract you from listening to them. And then take that week to, one, figure out your values, figure out, what your fears are, and like, how is that changing, like you said, changing your behaviors. If you figure all that stuff out, then you can have a game plan for what's next. And like, how do I change it? Get with yourself, no distractions, and figure out what it is.
I love that advice so much. Just get with yourself. And it is going to be hard, but you're worth it. You're worth it. Your life is worth it. Your kids are worth it. Your health is worth it.
Yeah. And I would say like the other piece of advice of like, especially like for folks that have children, or even if like your partner, if you don't do this, like if you can't, give yourself the freedom or the permission to listen to yourself and put yourself first, like your health and your wellness first, think about what your kids are going to emulate when they're older. And do you want them to emulate you in this state of like being unhappy, really unhappy, and maybe having bad habits and being angry or frustrated all the time. You really want that to be what they emulate, because they do watch you. Whatever you're putting out, like, it's not just you that it's hurting, it's actually hurting the people around you too. Some of the things that I'm doing now as I'm like starting to approach thinking about like what's next, is making a list of things that I don't want. So I think like making the lists of not so much of like what I want, I'm making my list of deal breakers of like, hey, if this job seems perfect, does it have any of the deal breakers? Because I know those are my triggers. So maybe figuring out your triggers and writing them down will help.
So I am so grateful you gave an hour to sit and share your learnings, which is vulnerable, Carrie. Like, that's super vulnerable. So, and I believe someone's going to benefit from this in their life. A woman, a man, it doesn't matter, that just needs to really be more aware. You're very self-aware. And I think that helped you make your decision. But I appreciate your time and your heart and your vulnerability.
I'm so grateful that we got to meet and that we stayed in touch.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope that we see you back. Make sure that you like the episode if this is something that you enjoyed today, and subscribe. We appreciate everybody's support, and we hope to see you soon.